papurihan siya at siya ay pasalamatan? Well, let us put it this way. In one of the prefaces in the weekday masses, we are told God has no need of our praise. God does good. And if God expects us to be grateful, it is not for Himself. God is not diminished as God because we do not give thanks to God. No. God expects gratitude not for His own sake, but for our sake. He remains God. But what happens to us if we do not give thanks? What type of persons do we become if we are ungrateful? Aha! So yes, Jesus expects us to give thanks, not because He will benefit from it, but because we will benefit from giving thanks and being grateful. Let me repeat that. God expects us to be grateful, not because of any benefit that He will get from our thanksgiving. Who benefits from our gratitude? Not God, but we ourselves. We become more human. We become more wholesome if we are grateful and thankful to God. That leads us to an analysis. Why did the 9 supposedly Jewish people, lepers, who were healed, why did they not give thanks? There are many possible answers to that. Jesus had told them to go to Jerusalem and present themselves to the priests. You know, there is a possibility that these 9 Jewish lepers thought that what really healed them was their following of the Levitical law, to go to Jerusalem and present themselves to the priests. It did not probably dawn on them that it was God working in Jesus who healed them, but it was their observance of the law, observance of Leviticus, going to Jerusalem, presenting ourselves to the priests. That's what heals us, probably. Or they probably also thought, anyway, we belong to Israel. We belong to God's chosen people. Then, if God heals us, well, dapat lang. Rightly so. We are the chosen people. So, we don't need to give thanks to God. It is God's obligation to heal us. We are His people. Wow. No matter what, no, the mindset was, whether it is because, it is not Jesus who healed us, but our obedience to the law, or we belong to God's chosen people, so we need to be treated well. Whatever went into the mind of these 9 lepers, you could see that no room was present for gratitude. No room was present for this surprise at God's goodness to them. Because goodness is for me, it is intended for me by right, as part of God's people. And I deserve this because I followed the law. Now, if that is the mentality, there will be no gratitude. But the Samaritan, he probably was ignorant of the law. And because he did not belong to the chosen people, Israel, he knew something good just happened to him. And he must go back to the one who was the instrument of that goodness. And he gave thanks. So the Samaritan was showing to us a human heart. The heart that does not say that the good things that come my way are the product of my right, the product also of my action. The person who is able to give thanks is the person who is still open to God's action in one's life. And this is what I'm afraid of. In our world of today, when we give awards to self-made men and women, self-made, when we are able to do so many things, we can clone animals, we can clone human beings, we can go to the moon, we can go to Mars and Venus. We can claim every right, legitimate right. Will there still be room for thanksgiving and gratitude? I dread to see the day when people don't give thanks anymore because everything is a product of my action and this is deserved by my right. When that happens, there is no more room for the surprising actions of God. And what happens? God remains God, but we become monsters, ungrateful people, proud, and we will pretend to be God. So thanksgiving is not so much about God becoming God. It's about us becoming fully human, not proud, but recognizing that God has a room in our lives and that we are recipients of God's goodness to us. We have to learn that lesson, and we Christians must preserve that through our act of thanksgiving. The Eucharist is the supreme act of thanksgiving. That's why we are asked to have this devotion to the Eucharist, making us men and women humble, giving space to God and God's action. Let me end this with a short sharing. I had the opportunity to visit the seminaries in Papua New Guinea. And in one seminary, before I left the seminary, that seminary, to move to another seminary, there was one seminarian who approached me for an interview. He was finding it difficult to communicate in English. You know, one simple sentence would take him, I thought, what was the equivalent of a lifetime. No, he was grappling with words, and he was probably trying to organize his thoughts. No? But he was squirming in front of me. No? Parang nahihiya na hindi malaman. No? But you know, he just wanted to say something. He said, you know, after this long period of grappling with words, he said, I want to thank you. During your first Mass, and there were village people who came, and many of them don't know English, you spoke from your heart. And the people understood your message. After the Mass, they were telling me, it seemed that they listened to the homily in Pidgin and not in English. They understood. And they asked me, did he speak in Pidgin? They said, no, in English. But then they said, then God has spoken to us. We understood him. And then this seminarian, you know, was expressing the thanksgiving of the people. And then he said, I don't know how to thank you. I said, well, thank God. No, thank God, not me. And then you know what he did? He stood up and hugged me. Hugged me. Tightly. And I felt it was meant for God, not for me. This person who did not know what to do to give thanks beyond words, but in living action. And I felt like God was near, not only to them, but to me. And I gave thanks to God too. Let our lives be open to the surprises of God, and seeing God, we give thanks, and life becomes bright. The word has been exposed. Let us now fulfill it.